What if I told you that waiting for help is the most dangerous thing you can do? That no superhero, no leader, no miracle is coming, not because the world is cruel, but because you are the one you've been waiting for. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, someone will fix this? Someone will stand up? Someone will say what needs to be said? What if that someone never comes? Today, I'm here to tell you something that might be hard to hear. No one is coming to save you. Not because you don't matter, but because you are the one we're counting on. The world isn't waiting for a rescue, it's waiting for you to rise. And by the end of this talk, I hope you'll no longer wait for a hero, you'll become one. We grow up surrounded by stories that shape our understanding of the world and ourselves. From fairy tales to Hollywood blockbusters, we are told over and over that when the crisis hits, when the darkness feels overwhelming, someone will come. A prince, a warrior, a wise elder, a chosen one, someone stronger, braver, more capable than us. We absorb this quietly without realizing it. It becomes part of how we interpret life, that if we wait long enough, if we endure quietly enough, if we are lucky enough, someone will arrive to set things right. This narrative isn't just in the books we read as children. It follows us into adulthood, quietly embedded in our expectations. We look to governments to solve all our problems. We wait for the perfect leader to appear, the ideal movement to rise, the flawless moment to begin. We say things like, someone should do something, and we mean it sincerely. But underneath that sincerity is a subtle surrender, a subtle belief that change, real, meaningful change, is something we receive, not something we initiate. This rescue fantasy is seductive because it lets us off the hook. It gives us permission to stay comfortable, to delay action, to remain bystanders in our own lives. If help is always on the way, we don't have to move. We don't have to make hard choices, take uncomfortable stands, or risk being wrong. We simply wait, and the waiting becomes a habit, a form of quiet resignation disguised as hope. But hope is not passive, and this fantasy, no matter how beautifully told, is dangerous. It trains us to outsource our agency, to believe that someone else will always know better, fight harder, love deeper, that someone else will carry the weight, take the fall, lead the charge. It disconnects us from the truth that has always been ours, that we are capable, that we are powerful, that we are enough even in our uncertainty. And the most heartbreaking part is that when the rescue never comes, we blame ourselves, not for waiting, but for not being worthy of saving. We internalize that absence as failure, not realizing that the real failure was in believing the myth in the first place, in believing that our liberation, our healing, our progress was someone else's job to begin with. There is a moment, quiet and often uncomfortable, when we realize that no one is going to hand us the life we dream of. That moment can feel like a loss of innocence, of ease, of the comforting illusion that someone else has the answers, the plan, the responsibility. But in truth, that moment is not a collapse. It's a beginning. Because the instant we stop pointing outward and begin looking inward, we start reclaiming something far more potent than comfort. We begin reclaiming power. Accountability has been misunderstood, even feared. People hear the word and imagine blame, guilt, punishment. But accountability isn't about shame. It's about ownership. It's the radical act of saying, I am responsible for my life, for my thoughts, for my actions, for what I build, for what I allow. And that statement is not a burden, it's a liberation. It means you're no longer waiting to be chosen, excused, saved, or rescued. It means you've stepped into authorship. You're no longer just living a life, you're writing it. We often avoid accountability because it asks us to sit in discomfort, to look at the places where we've fallen short, the ways we've settled, delayed, or stayed silent. But discomfort is not our enemy. It is a teacher. It shows us where we still have room to grow. And in that space, between who we are and who we're capable of becoming, lies every possibility we've ever dreamed of. When we accept that our decisions shape our reality, we start to see the incredible capacity we have to change it. Owning your choices doesn't mean you caused every hardship in your life. It means you get to decide how you respond, what you choose next, who you become in the aftermath. And that is an extraordinary kind of strength, not one that comes from pretending to have it all figured out, but one that grows from being honest enough to begin again, wiser this time. Accountability says, "This life is mine, my joy, my peace, my voice, my potential. It's mine to tend to nurture, and to fight for. Not because someone is watching, not because someone told you to, but because you've recognized that there is nothing more powerful than a person who owns their life with clarity, courage, and intention." We often think of courage as something explosive, something grand, cinematic, unforgettable. We picture the moment someone stands at a podium, speaks a trembling truth, leads a march, or stares down injustice with unwavering fire. And yes, those moments matter, but real courage, the kind that changes a life or shapes a person, is rarely that dramatic. More often, it is quiet, inconvenient, repetitive. It is choosing again and again to show up when no one is clapping, when no one notices, and when everything in you would rather retreat. Courage isn't always the roar. Sometimes it's the whisper that says, "Try again tomorrow." Courage lives in the mundane. It's in the decision to set a boundary and honor it, even when it disappoints others. It's in asking for help when your pride tells you not to. It's in the unglamorous work of healing, sitting with pain you'd rather avoid, having conversations you'd rather escape, or facing truths about yourself you'd rather not see. It's in showing up for your values when no one is watching. The world may not hand out awards for these acts, but they are acts of rebellion all the same. Rebellion against fear, against shame, against the version of yourself that says you can't. There is a kind of courage that comes with consistency, the courage of showing up even when the outcome is uncertain, even when progress feels invisible. The courage of practicing, not performing. The courage of choosing integrity over comfort day after day in small and difficult ways. It doesn't ask for applause. It asks for presence. It asks you to keep going, not because the path is clear, but because your purpose is. And that kind of courage builds something far more lasting than adrenaline. It builds character. It builds resilience. It builds the quiet, inner knowing that you can trust yourself to stand firm, not just when it's easy or inspiring, but when it's messy, lonely, and hard. There is a misconception that to rely on yourself means to be alone, that independence requires disconnection, or that strength demands self-sufficiency at all costs. But true self-reliance isn't about walling yourself off from others. It's about becoming rooted in yourself first. It's about understanding that your foundation, your choices, your direction must begin within, not in the approval or permission of others. It is not a rejection of connection. It is what makes genuine connection possible. When you stop waiting for someone else to validate your worth, your dreams, your readiness, you begin to act from a place of self-trust rather than insecurity. You begin to build not from neediness, but from clarity. We are taught to associate self-reliance with isolation because we live in a world that often praises independence but punishes vulnerability. The truth is, self-reliance and vulnerability are not opposites. They are companions. Relying on yourself means knowing who you are, what you need, and being willing to speak it. It means knowing how to hold space for your own thoughts before you ask others for theirs. It means being able to sit with your discomfort without always reaching for someone else to fix it. And yet, it also means having the courage to say, "I need support," without losing your sense of self in the asking. We all need people. We need community. We need belonging. We need to be witnessed and supported. But those things cannot replace your own voice, your own instincts, your own responsibility to your path. Help is valuable, essential even, but it is not a substitute for your own agency. You are allowed to lean on others without handing them the blueprint to your life. You are allowed to be part of something bigger while still knowing that your role, Your choices and your power are your own. Self-reliance is not about doing everything alone. It's about knowing that even when you're surrounded by others, the decision to begin, to commit, to rise is ultimately yours. It is the quiet strength of a person who is deeply anchored in their values and their voice, who seeks connection not from emptiness but from wholeness. And in that grounded state, you can walk alongside others, not dependent, not distant, but fully present and fully responsible for who you are becoming. Would you like to move on to expanding "The world is shaped by the bold, not the perfect" next? There is a quiet lie many of us carry, the belief that we must be perfect before we can be seen, before we can speak, before we can lead, before we can make a difference. We wait. We wait until we have the right words, the right credentials, the right body, the right timing, the right version of ourselves. We convince ourselves that if we just had more certainty, more knowledge, more clarity, then we could finally begin. But the world was never changed by people who were perfect. It was changed by people who were brave enough to move while they were still figuring it out. Boldness is often misunderstood. It's not arrogance, it's not carelessness, it's not loudness. Boldness is the willingness to be seen while still unfinished. It is the choice to act even when your hands are shaking, even when your voice quivers, even when your past tries to convince you that you're not ready. Boldness does not wait for fear to vanish. It walks alongside it. It does not require a flawless plan. It begins with intention and allows the rest to unfold. The people who shape the world do not do so because they are perfect. They do so because they stop letting perfection be a prerequisite for action. We admire those who dare to challenge the norm, who speak truth even when it costs them, who take risks that others only think about. But what we often overlook is how messy and uncertain that process really is. Behind every bold act is 1,000 small decisions to keep going, to raise a hand, to ask a question, to offer a new idea, to show up even after failure. The bold are not fearless. They simply refuse to let fear dictate the boundaries of their life. Waiting for perfection is a form of self-protection. It shields us from criticism, from rejection, from vulnerability, but it also keeps us silent. It keeps us stuck. It keeps us small. The world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more real people. People who are willing to stand in their imperfections and still offer what they have. People who are willing to be wrong, to be humbled, to grow publicly, because the risk of being imperfect is still less than the risk of never beginning. Would you like the final section, "You are the turning point," expanded in the same way? There comes a moment in every life, a pause, a fracture, a quiet reckoning, when you realize that the trajectory of your future is not a matter of fate, not the result of someone else's choices, not even a continuation of your past. It is yours, entirely, terrifyingly, beautifully yours. And in that moment, you're faced with a question not about what will happen to you, but about who you will decide to be. That moment doesn't always arrive with a grand sign or an audience. Sometimes it comes on an ordinary day when everything looks the same on the outside, but something irrevocable has shifted within you. A decision has been made, not loudly, not impulsively, but deeply. You are no longer waiting for a sign. You are becoming it. We're often taught to see ourselves as small pieces of a much larger machine, interchangeable, forgettable, replaceable. But that idea is not only untrue, it's dangerous. Because when people believe they are powerless, they stop showing up. They stop choosing. They stop imagining what could be. But the truth is, you are never just a witness to the world.